For a man who is 6 feet 4 inches, with a springy quiff and strikingly sunken eyes, it is surprising how easily Peter Serafinowicz blends into the background. Often, he is heard and not seen. He makes a pretty penny from advert voiceovers and computer games, not to mention supplying the menacing tones of Darth Maul in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, and voicing a bank-robbing Cockney gorilla in the recent hit animation Sing. There was his award-winning eponymous 2007 sketch show, which introduced the world to the Butterfield diet plan: 1 cornflake for breakfast, broccoli shavings for lunch, a baked bean for dinner, but on Saturdays you could literally eat anything for 24 hours, including pork cylinders. This followed the cult favorite Look Around You, which perfectly spoofed 1970s educational TV, at one point teaching viewers the correct way to shave raspberries before coating them in gold. It was like wearing a blue sarcophagus. Serafinowicz is the Tick. Photograph Miles Aronowitz. But, those aside, Serafinowicz has mostly restricted himself to guesting in sitcoms Spaced, Parks and Recreation, and Hollywood blockbusters Guardians of the Galaxy, John Wick 2. There's not so much pressure that way, he tells me, when we meet in a London hotel, though you still need to be on your toes. On the first day of shooting Spy, he was rehearsing a scene with Melissa McCarthy when he noticed she was crying. I asked if she was alright and she said, "Well, I'm doing the scene." I went, "Oh, you're acting." I thought to myself, it better bring my A game. Not this D game I've been working with so far. At least it wasn't all riding on me. That's all about to change with The Tick, the new Amazon comedy that gives Serafinowicz his largest role to date. You can't miss him as the title character, an odd, old-fashioned superhero in a world overrun with caped crusaders. He spends the series in a bright blue rubberized bodysuit, antennae twitching on his head. The costume is like this vertical blue sarcophagus, explains the 45-year-old, who lives in London with the comic actor Sarah Alexander, best known for Coupling, and their 2 children. I feel as if I'm in my own private room when I'm wearing it, he says. It's quite isolating. I like to mess around between takes, but that's out of the question. If there is an upside, it's that it fits neatly with the Tick himself, who stands apart from his crime-fighting colleagues by virtue of his innocence and ingenuousness. He's a comic naif in the same mold as Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story, a buddy from Elf. I suppose that is a tiny compensation, he says, pouring himself a coffee. Everyone thinks he's a freak. Even the other superheroes are like, who is this guy? While British audiences may be asking the same question, American fans have cherished the character from his comic book debut in the 1980s through to previous TV incarnations. When we were filming in New York, we got so much attention, Serafinowicz says. People were slowing down their cars and calling out, why, it's the Tick, a big blue guy, if they couldn't remember his name. Ant-Man was another. I didn't correct them. Nor does he seize on my error when I accidentally refer to him as the Flea, although once I acknowledge it myself, he veers off on a whimsical tangent that provides an insight into how his mind works. Ticks are different to fleas, aren't they? They're dangerous. You mustn't break them off because they can get stuck in you, and they give you a very nasty disease that can ruin your life. You get terribly ill. For a brief moment I glimpse a typical Serafinowicz train of thought, which is apt to be diverted along a tangled and circuitous route. He admits as much when he tells me about a recent trip to Munich. At breakfast, there were these antlers with pretzels hanging on them. This pretzel and antler arrangement I just found incredibly funny. He has shaken his head, a laugh bubbling up until it erupts into a dirty cackle. That sort of thing can set me off for a good hour. I'll start thinking about it. Where did the idea come from? Who approved it? It's what makes his comedy so seductive. Whether it's Taoism, the religion he created on Look Around You, which enables its believers to talk to octopuses, or any of the doolally characters from his sketch show, a debonair vampire working as a presenter on the shopping channel, a jolly estate agent who makes menacing asides in gangland patois, his comic creations have the air of daydreams pursued to the loopy conclusion. Like a benign Chris Morris, he specializes in the comedy of disparity, demented phrases and ideas presented with straight-faced gravitas. Something slightly different, though, is occurring in the case of Sassy Trump, a character he has created by overdubbing videos of the US president, using his exact words delivered in a camp whine, like an American Kenneth Williams. Whereas Serafinowicz usually invites us to see the ridiculous side of things that might otherwise be taken seriously, Sassy Trump is intended to prevent its audience from becoming inured to the poisonous poppycock emerging daily from the president's mouth. The point is to stop it becoming normal, he says. Most people would agree he appears to be a tough guy, an alpha male, when in fact he has this daintiness, this exaggerated femininity, that is somehow disguised by this tidal wave of bullshit. Listen to what he actually says and you realize he's like some mean, bitchy, failed Broadway choreographer. If Liberace were alive, he would call him up and say, "Donald, you've got to tone it down, it's embarrassing." Serafinowicz has been revoicing Trump for 18 months now. In between his other pursuits, writing, acting, directing, his music videos include one for Hot Chip starring Terrence Stamp, as well as tweeting prodigiously as a way of sharpening his gag-crafting skills. A Billion Jokes, a book of his Twitticisms, was published 5 years ago, and he still prizes the 140-character format. "I use Twitter as my public joke book and I've found it very helpful, that thing of ripping out any extraneous words. It's a great lesson for writing at any length." But he will still find time for Trump, even though a 2-minute clip can take 3 hours out of his day. Adding this silky voice removes the layer of bullshit and reveals more clearly what he's actually saying, he says. It's easy to ignore when we're bombarded every day with it. He has experimented with Cockney Trump, to foreground the violence in the words, and sophisticated Trump, to highlight his pathetically doomed pretensions. Sassy, though, is here to stay, and with good reason. I think it's the one that will annoy him the most. The Tick is on Amazon Prime Video from the 25th of August.